Okay, class, and welcome to LP4 number 1 video audio. This was another chapter I think that for me at least was pretty interesting, and it kind of strikes close to home because it embraces online retail, which virtually all of us at most levels anymore have had some interface. In keeping with our regular format, the first thing we'll do is talk about what the first half of the seminar assessment will be for this learning plan. So this will be, again, half of the overall seminar assessment assignment, and it is simply read the case study in your text in Chapter 9, pages 618 to 622, and answer the 4 questions noted on page 622 at the end of the case study. Students always ask, of course, well, how long is this supposed to be? What is the expectation? And I would say please hold your papers to no more than 1 to 1 1/4 pages. Hopefully that helps you. Why are we interested in the online retail sector? Well, it's growing at a phenomenal pace, and there still is a lot of opportunity within online retailing for existing and new business opportunities. I thought this figure from your PowerPoints was especially good because it shows the composition to scale of all the components of the U.S. retail industry. And if you look at online retail online retail, it's only in a nascent stage of overall retailing within the country. In fact, it's only 6% of all retail sales of all kinds. But of course, it's still growing faster than all the offline segments. And businesses, of course, are interested in how they capitalize on this. One of the phenomenons that your text talks about is that while the internet has been extremely disruptive within particular industries, many industries in many different ways, some of the assumptions that were made around doing business on the web turned out not to be exactly true. It does reduce search and transaction costs, and it had in some cases lower market entry costs, but it didn't force all traditional store merchants out of business as some predicted. The reason being is because the cost of maintaining an online presence turned out to be much higher than many estimated. As it developed, and I think I talked about this in an earlier presentation, as it developed as a mechanism to sell or conduct business, the cost charged by consultants and those with the technical expertise to make it happen have gone up considerably in many cases, especially when you're talking about components such as the ability to for a customer to purchase through your site. Those kinds of characteristics or items within a website are expensive. There's all kinds of legal issues that people really didn't account for that also raise the cost of doing business. Issues like how do you actually deliver So on balance, while the internet has been disruptive in many industries and changed the way in which those businesses are conducted, uh, they weren't what people actually thought they would be in all respects. So if you look at this from a macro perspective, utilizing Porter's five forces, and as MBA students, um, I think you're all familiar with Porter's five forces. Is not, you should be. And so just in case, I haven't included about a 14-minute video that's produced by Harvard Business School where he teaches. And Porter himself is interviewed in this video and explains the five forces and how it's used to analyze different industries. The one he talks about, I believe, in the video is the airline industry. And one of the things the internet has done is lower barriers to entry within certain industries. Travel, education are good examples. It hasn't made those barriers to entry as cheap as some have predicted. There are operating costs that have exceeded what they predicted. But again, it's still modified many industries and how the services within those industries are actually delivered. In some cases, it's lowered the power of suppliers. In some cases, it's empowered suppliers. One of the things it's done uh, for customers in many cases within industries like travel, like education, is it's empowered customers by giving them different, less expensive choices with, in some cases, near or equal or even better levels of service and experience. Uh, it's lowered in firm-specific cases and in industry cases. Uh, it's modified the value chain, made many elements of the supply chain cheaper, and saved companies in many cases lots of money. Your first written assignment is on Amazon. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. Rather, instead, I've included two videos on this slide that you might want to watch. The first is 58 minutes long, and the second one is about 14 minutes long. It's a segment from the 60 Minutes show, and it's pretty good actually. So I would encourage you to watch at least the second one and possibly the first for those of you that are really serious. Uh, but hopefully, again, it will give you some insights into your written assignment for this particular learning plan that compares Amazon with Best Buy, I believe. Now again, the internet has affected many services. If you think about the finance industry and the real estate industry and the insurance and travel, they all shared something in common, even the education uh, industry did. And that is their product that they actually sold and controlled was information. And the better their information, either as a database or their access to different kinds of information, look at it from a travel perspective or real estate, the better their access and knowledge of information, the better their value proposition to individual customers. And so the internet has undermined a lot of those businesses that operated within those industries because, again, it made information ubiquitous. So in finance, stockbrokers, you used to pay a 3% commission on a uh, a transaction. So say if you bought $10,000 worth of stock, you bought 100 shares of a stock valued at $100 per share, that'd be $10,000. You would pay a 3% commission once upon a time purchasing and exiting that transaction. So it would cost you $300 to buy it, and then 3% of whatever the price was, and you sold it. But let's say hopefully it didn't go down. So if you sold it again at 100, you've had $600 in commissions. Well, that stock would have to go to $106 before you would have made a before you would have paid for the commissions, or in essence broken even. Now it costs about 8%. I'm sorry, $8 per transaction for companies like Schwab, that when they do their online trading, regardless of how big the transaction is, it's on a per transaction basis. So it's changed the volume of trading considerably online because it's simply a lot cheaper to do that, and it's fostered a whole new industry in day trading and way people invest. Insurance was the same way, and Progressive was the first to go online and offer those services online. Travel industry, same thing. Travel agents they're not dinosaurs, but there are a lot fewer of them than there were before the internet came along and put that service online. Airlines are hand in hand with travel, and once upon a time there was a company in the 80s, well, up until the internet, called Sabre, and it was a service that coordinated all the reservations for all airlines, and it was actually owned by United Airlines. So even if you were flying on Delta, Delta would tap into the computer system of Sabre and determine whether or not you could fly on a particular flight, how much it would cost. And United actually made more money with that than they did flying people around. Educational, and that's all changed now, obviously. Although Sabre exists, it's a service that's integrated into all kind of online management for the airlines, with some exceptions like Southwest, who does their own. Education, hey, you're taking an online class. It's a very different model than it used to be. There's two kinds of categories for the most part. Transaction brokers, that would be like Schwab when you do, or Amazon or eBay when you buy something, they take a percent. And hands-on service providers like education. Now, one of the things that I was really happy with about this particular chapter was that it ended on Uber, and it was complete coincidence that I integrated Uber earlier. I hadn't read this part of the chapter, so I didn't know that the book discussed it at all. So I think that was really great, because you have a little bit of a knowledge around it going into in reading about it now. And so I've included two videos around Uber that complement, I think, very nicely the videos which I just watched myself yesterday. But they do talk about, it's the first time I've heard in an interview around Uber about how it's really positioned in the future for driverless cars. And I thought it was really interesting in the one video, I think I don't know if it's the first or second one, where they talk about a real threat. If you go back to a barrier to entry threat, a real threat to Uber is somebody like Google offering the identity service for free, and or at least a discounted rate. They wouldn't take any money from it, so the driver gets to keep all the money in that sense. And they're really positioning themselves to try to create a reservation system just like Uber has for driverless cars, which Google is heavily invested in, and Apple is about ready to, I understand, I just saw yesterday, to roll out a similar driverless car. So they're coming, and they're coming in the very near future. And what companies are trying to do, like Uber, Microsoft, Apple, Google, is to get involved in that evolution of driving by creating a reservation system with drivers now, but also serve driverless cars. I think it's very interesting. It's certainly an eye in the future. So I would encourage you to watch those two videos. They're both about 4.5 minutes each. Enjoy.